Let's do an in-depth tutorial on how I did this sort of collagey Photoshop type render using just the basic lines that I exported from CAD and put into Photoshop. Let's go. So first of all, grab your water, stay hydrated. Let's jump into it. So I've got my line work here in ArchiCAD. As you can see, there's nothing happening. So we need to export this line work into our Photoshop file. So let's go ahead and do that. Whether you're using ArchiCAD or Revit, doesn't matter. Just make sure you have the shadows on. It's important that you render one without shadows and one with shadows, because you want to be able to manipulate that in Photoshop afterwards. So yeah, let's get to that. It's also useful because you can adjust the opacity now. You have complete control over the shadows. You don't have to go and change a setting. You can just go the bang, bang, on, off. The next thing you want to do is find yourself some inspiration. Pinterest is your best friend. Literally just go on here and type up Photoshop, architecture, internal render, and find a style that you like. Find yourself some colors that you like, find yourself a material palette that you like, and you can kind of use that as a base to fill out your scene. If you already have these chosen, then it's easier for you. I would still recommend trying to find some inspiration though, because it's hard to do without. The next thing I recommend doing is heading onto this website, SketchUp Textures. My favorite website for textures. It has thousands and thousands of different seamless textures. That's the keyword, seamless, because when you define them as a pattern, which we'll be doing, you want it to connect. You want the blocks to connect. You don't want it to, get all rigid and mess up your scene. So you want to find seamless textures. Now, once you've chosen your materials and spent hours looking like I did, you can put them in a folder. You want to jump back into your Photoshop file. Now, what you do here is you can either do this part first, select where you want them, or you can start opening them up. And let's just open one up now. And you want to go up to edit and define pattern. Now you can name this whatever, but I just leave it. It will create this as a pattern. So then you can go into here and select whatever part you want, which I will select. Which did I choose? I chose concrete. I'm going to select this and create a new layer, name it concrete. And I like to use black because this helps for masking later. You can put that in there, paint bucket tool, double click down here, go to pattern overlay, and scroll down to your pattern. Adjust the scale because it might be a little bit, too big, too small. Get whatever works for you. And basically rinse and repeat for the rest of the project. Now, I would turn my shadows on for this because it will change how your textures look. The reason you're setting up these layers and you're naming them and you're putting so much work into this is so you can just easily pull a slider later on down the track and adjust the colors. Another thing that I'm also going to do with this concrete is select this, and I want it to be sort of a bluish or a dark bluish sort of color. So I'm going to go create a new layer here and do that. And then I'm going to go to adjustments to the right and go to color adjustment. And it will give it that little tint. You can adjust the opacity of that as well. I'm going to fast track me filling out these textures. So let me know in the comments if you just want the raw unedited version. But yeah, I don't think you want to sit through it. So let's go. Now, after you've finished doing that and spending way too much time on it, like I did, it can get quite tedious. we'll jump into putting the trees, the people, the skies, and the effects in. So here I've got my Pinterest up, and you just want to find like these sort of packs on Pinterest. I'll put a link in the description below because these are public, so you can use these if you'd like, but they're just saved packs. I'm just going to drag this sky that I found on Pinterest and put it in here, and put it down the bottom. Now this is a good chance to organize your layers, so what I like to do is all the material layers that you made, select them all and click here, which creates a folder, and you can just call this materials. Just cleans up your file a little bit and you can just switch it on and off. So let's drag this sky out, drag it down, or maybe I'll just leave it. Now what you can do is you can click on the original layer, select the background, click back on your sky, right click, layer via copy, and then delete the other one. So that just creates the sky, and you can adjust the background to this as well, the opacity of the background. Now I did forget to change the camera angle for this part of the recording, but basically you want to put in your trees that you found from Pinterest and use the multiply adjustment layer when you're moving them around, and just placing them where you feel is necessary. Now, one thing I did notice that I forgot before is the pavers look a bit off because they're not too perspective. So what you're going to want to do is do a little trick here. Just go all black, go pattern overlay. This is if you have anything that's like pavers that need to be drawn to perspective. Rasterize that layer, which flattens it with the pattern overlay. And then what you can do is go down here and just resize it to whatever size you want. And then you want to hit this one up here, which allows you to adjust this. And you want to move your pavers so they're down. Let me just redo that. This does take a little bit of trial and error to get it to work. So move the perspective lines, and now I have something that I think is quite reasonable. And just click OK. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is a Photoshop render, so just keep in mind that it's not perfect. Doesn't have to line up completely, but that is roughly what I want. So here I've just added a little background. I've done this by just using this picture, same with the sky, and now you can just disable that on and off. I'm going to add some plants in front of this, and let's move on to the people. So just like the other things, you want to find some people off Pinterest. I'm going to use these ones. Create a folder, put them in there, name them people, and I found some ones of people sitting. So I want someone to sit on this bench here. Maybe not this guy, because it doesn't fit the vibe, you know. Gotta find someone that is doing the activity that you want them to do. So don't just put people in for the sake of doing it. Do it because they're actually doing that activity. So I'm going to choose this lady up here, layer via copy. You want to get rid of the background, and for some reason she has like a weird shadow behind her. Just go through, fix up, and do it the same way that you did the others. So now I've got her in here. I'm going to flip her so she's kind of sitting roughly how I want her to sit. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to be adding in shadows after this to make this look a little bit more realistic as well. But yeah, basically just go through and do this. Don't overpopulate your image with people. I might just add another person over here, and then maybe someone in the top bit as well, behind, looking out. So now you've got your people in. I've got some people up here, which I will probably reduce the opacity for, to make it look like they're behind the screen. We're going to be adjusting this glass anyway, basically adding a masking layer and adding some effects to this, but you want to go and create a layer and put it behind all of these and add some shadows, because at the moment it's looking very unrealistic. Just kind of guess based off the sun angle where the shadow could be, and kind of draw them in. Doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as you have a rough sort of idea. And when you've drawn them in, you want to reduce the opacity down heaps. Just kind of play around with where the shadows hit. Obviously the sun's coming from this side, so the shadows are going to be on this side. So, just a little indication of where they could be like that works fine. And for this lady over here, we're just going to draw sort of a little thing with an arm coming out. This might take a little bit of playing around if you can't get it right. In fact, that almost looks like it's pretty good. Gives a good indication that that's where the sun's coming from and that's the angle. This one probably needs a bit of work. You know what, that's good, that's fine. As long as you're showing rough shadows, it's good. After you're happy with everything, the people, the trees, the shadows, we can go ahead and move on to the last part, which is the effects. Now, the best way to do this is to use masking layers. So, for example, I'm going to go to my paving here, and you want to click down to layer masks. I have some brushes set up. I've got a pack of Kyle's watercolor, which I'll leave in the description. Super handy to just have different sort of Photoshop brush sets. You can download these for free. And you want to just reduce the opacity when you're doing this. Click on the layer mask and you can play around with basically anything on that layer, which is why you separate the layers in the first place, so you can do this at the end. So I want to choose a brush that's not too bold and just lightly go over this and create some sort of light and grunge effect over here. Not too much. You don't want to make this too sort of bold, just little bits. And then if you want to edit this, the opacity, just double click on the layer mask and you can change the opacity of that over here. So I think that was good though, where I had it. But yeah, basically just work through that, go through different materials. I'm going to show you guys how I do my glass as well. So obviously we have our glass layer. Create a masking layer here. And a good way to do this is to kind of you can either do this manually and just kind of like paint this in, but for this sake, I'm just gonna, doesn't have to be perfect, but you kind of just go through and create this sort of like angled effect. I'm gonna make this a bit smaller. The sun's coming from the left, so the angled effect wants to be going to this way. Now I'm going to reduce the paintbrush size. You're basically just creating little streaks in the glass. Basically just go through, do that, edit the opacity again, double click on the layer mask. If you don't want it to be strong. If you do, change the transparency. So now that you're happy with how it's looking, I've went and added some stairs because I feel like the inside needed a little bit of life. I might add a person in here or here as well, just to give it a little bit more oomph for the inside. Basically, I feel like it needs some color. I'm gonna go with yellow. You can adjust this afterwards. If you feel like you need to add detail as well, it's see how much of a difference that makes when you add some color in. Obviously you can reduce the opacity of this. It just brightens the whole image rather than having an empty inside. So after you've done that, my favorite thing to do is go to your raw PDF that you inserted, and if you just turn it off, it creates this white outline, which I think is super cool. And you can manually go and do this for the trees as well, to give it that white sort of outline. But I think this is looking pretty good. Adjusting the opacity of trees as well is also a good technique. Sometimes they look a bit too bold when you put them in, so adjusting them a little bit, maybe 80%. And same with the people as well. This is why it's good to have everything grouped, because you can go in and you can just adjust the whole thing at once. So let's make them 80% as well. And shadows, obviously you can go and make these bolder as well, depending on what you want it to look like. And here's the final render that we've come up with. If you guys enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a comment below and what you enjoyed about it, and please check out my Instagram as well, because I'm starting to upload a little bit more and starting to get a bit of a roll with that, so that'd be good. But yeah, leave any ideas for future videos, because always good to have ideas. And yeah, stay at it. Cheers.